One fateful day, words got to King Ashoki that some men were approaching the village. The king thought Prince Zuka was finally coming for the ceremony. So they set up a feast awaiting the prince. Unfortunately for the king, a group of fierce warriors from a distant village arrived instead. Their leader, a formidable chieftain named Imo, issued an ultimatum. They demanded the village's strongest warriors to face Imo in combat. Should Imo prevail, the village would surrender and pay tribute. But if the village won, their lives would be spared. Fear spread like wildfire through the village. Even the most valiant warriors trembled at the thought of facing Imo and his ruthless warriors. The chieftain's reputation preceded him. He was said to be invincible, a master of combat. Desperate, the villagers turned to their king, who offered a glimmer of hope. He promised to give his daughter's hand in marriage to whoever defeated the warriors. But even this incentive failed to inspire any volunteers. As the deadline approached, hope was fading away from the people and the feeling of fear engulfed them. The pressure was more on the king, who is supposed to stand as a symbol of hope for his people. But even he trembled at the voice of Imo. King Ashoki, in an attempt to save his people, sent word to Prince Zuka, pleading for his assistance to fight off the fierce Izugu warriors. However, on hearing the name of the warriors, Zuka trembled even more than King Ashoki. He refused to honor the plea from King Ashoki. As all hope seemed lost, one of the elders who serve in the king's cabinet whispered to the king about a possible solution, which they haven't thought about all this while. He reminded the king about Elien's musical gift and how he used his music to heal the sick and restore hope to the weak. Perhaps he can also use his magical sounds to convince the Izugu warriors to back off. The king hesitated for a while until he gave in to his hopelessness and ordered for Elien to be released from the dungeon. The once vibrant drummer boy was now looking like a shadow of himself. His legs could barely carry him. The king ordered for him to be well fed and have a bath, with new royal robes put on him. However, Elien rejected the offer. King Ashoki could barely look the young man in the eyes. He was filled with guilt. However, a greater feeling than guilt was surging through his body. The fear of the Izugu warriors still lingered in the air. The elder walked up to Elien and offered his sincere apologies. He narrated their predicament to the boy and pleaded with him to attempt to save them as he was their only hope. Elien refused at first, but the thought of what will happen to the princess if their village fell into the hands of those warriors swayed his decision. Elien found himself filled with both fear and a sense of duty. He remembered the ancient rhythms his grandfather had taught him and felt a surge of determination. With trembling hands, he stepped forward and offered to face Imo. The villagers were surprised. A mere boy could never defeat such a formidable enemy, they whispered, with a mixture of fear and pity in their eyes. But Elien was undeterred. He took his drum and began to play. At first, the sound was faint, almost hesitant. But as Elien's confidence grew, the beats became louder, more insistent. The ancient rhythms seemed to resonate through the very air itself. The warriors paused, their weapons vibrating. Imo, himself, paused in his advance, his eyes fixated on Elien. The drumming reached a climax, the sound echoing off the mountains, carrying with it a primal power that seemed to shake the ground beneath their feet. Suddenly, with intense fear, the warriors turned and fled. Imo, once so magnificent, now stumbled backward, his eyes wide with terror. The villagers cheered, their spirits soaring as the ancient rhythms had saved them from certain defeat. Elien, the humble drummer boy, had proven that courage and wisdom could triumph over even the most formidable of enemies. His village was forever grateful, and the ancient rhythms of his grandfather became a symbol of hope and protection for generations to come. As Imo turned and joined his warriors in fleeing from the villagers rallied around the drummer boy, chanting his name as they threw him in the air. With every leap in the air, he could catch the gaze and smile of Yukolu. She was standing a distance from the cheering crowd. He couldn't make out what made him happier, the fact that he saved his village from terror, or the fact that Yukolu will finally be his. As the crowd continued to chant his name louder and louder, he heard a strange voice from the crowd which sounded like his grandfather. The voice was louder this time, with a tap on his leg, so he suddenly jumped up. Unfortunately, it had been a dream all this while. Elien had fallen asleep listening to his grandfather play a melodious tune from his drum. He smiled at his grandfather smiled back, knowing that his grandson had journeyed in his dream. Baba offered the boy some water to go wash his face, as he continued with his music.